Good afternoon. I'm Michael Morgenstern. Welcome to the CSA's Top Cloud Threats and AI panel. I'm joined by several industry practitioners and colleagues. We'll start with some introductions and then we'll jump into how AI improves response to the top threats and how AI makes things worse. By way of background, I'm Michael Morgenstern. I'm a partner at DayBlink Consulting. DayBlink's a boutique consulting firm focused on the intersection of cyber automation and cloud. We've been around for over 10 years. We do a lot of the boring but important work for clients, process improvement, documentation, etc. Most of our clients are Fortune 500 companies where we work across the cyber orgs and with CIO teams on projects like identity, asset management, and other technology issues. Mark.
Oh, thank you. Hi, my name is Mark Szalkiewicz, and I'm a cloud solution strategy architect with CyberArk. My background includes directory services, security, and identity across various roles at Microsoft and AWS. And I'm a member of CSA's Cloud Control Matrix, Top Threats, and several AI working groups. With my focal area being identity and access management and it being top threat number two, I'm real privileged to be part of this panel. It's evident that AI has and will continue to impact threat detection and mitigation significantly, and it significantly enhances a bad actor's ability to compromise cloud systems. In CyberArk, we realize that the cloud has a broad attack surface and identities are prime targets. So we recognize the importance of treating all cloud identities as privileged, and we look to focus on securing them with appropriate privilege controls and other solutions. So with that, I'm pleased to be here. Andrew.
Hello, I'm Andrew McCormick. I've spent the last 10 years or so of my career at Starbucks focusing on securing distributed workloads like the retail stores and the secrets they require until I started developing methods to use federated authentication and ephemeral credentials. Now I'm a principal solutions architect at Aembit, helping organizations solve their workload identity and access management problems at scale. And excited to talk about the implications that AI has on that.
Yeah, we'll start off with how does AI make things worse across the top cloud threats? I believe that something like 50% of CISA KEBs were API related. RESTful and GraphQL are about a third of those. And Wallarm claims that 60% of AI-powered APIs were externally accessible in 2024, and nearly 90% of them relied on insecure authentication mechanisms. So insecure interfaces and API security, which is cloud threat number 3, is back in the spotlight as being a major issue. Um, Other than that, I've seen lots of research studies over the past year that suggest that up to 10% of AI prompts could accidentally expose sensitive data, and accidental data disclosure is another of the top threats. Um, if I start lumping together a bunch of the technical vulnerabilities, we list in the top 11 system vulnerabilities, misconfiguration, inadequate change control. AIs are being trained now to search for vulnerable systems, which is number 8, to search for misconfigurations, which is number 1, or exploitable applications, which was number 6. The entire reconnaissance stage of the attack cycle, I think, is going to become an order of magnitude faster through automated AI. There's been some recent research that demonstrated that LLMs could be useful in actively exploiting day one vulns in real systems. The researchers fed 15 day one exploits into ChatGPT 4.0 and had an 87% successful exploitation rate. And then in this past February, I think it was like 3 weeks ago, HackerOne and Anthropic had a jailbreak challenge to test Claude 3.5, and 4 teams earned bounties for successful jailbreaks, which in the wild could easily result in data disclosure. So by my take, many of the top threats are going to be made far worse or far easier for exploitation by AI. Andrew, let me kick it back to you.
Yeah, I mean, talking about insecure interfaces and APIs, you mentioned the huge issues with insecure authentication on the APIs for the AI services, which I totally agree with. Uh, But to extend that, these AI services and agents need data from a vast range of services, and many of those are using weak credentials as well. And so when an AI agent is connecting to services with weak credentials like long-lived API keys, you need to go to great lengths to protect those keys from leaking out of the model or being inadvertently exposed by an agent. Like Michael said, AI may be the first type of workload that can be coerced into revealing secrets, and that's a risk that we need to take seriously. Um,
Will be
Will,
coerced.
will be
yeah,
taken seriously.
yeah. And to extend on that, the unauthenticated resource sharing is another one of the elements of the top threats. And what's worse than an insecure authentication method for an API? How about no authentication at all? Resources that are exposed unauthenticated have the potential to be discovered and exploited by attackers using AI for the reconnaissance and fingerprinting that Michael is talking about in just record time, or even just accidentally leak information it doesn't need to access. And then my final point on this is going to be around identity and access management. You might be thinking to yourself, these are all things that you can handle with proper identity and access management, right? Well, a lot of companies are still struggling with identity and access management for the rest of their workloads in this complex, multi-cloud, microservices environment that we live in today. An AI workload might be acting on behalf of a user or might be just fully autonomously operating as an agent. And, when acting on behalf of a user, you not only have to solve the authentication of the user, you also have to solve the authentication of the workload and the authorization of the human and the workload and meshing those together so that neither one gets too much privilege. With autonomous agents, the amount of sensitive data and services AI agents are going to need access to can significantly increase the blast radius of compromised credentials. Mark, what do you think?
Those are really good points. And I have a few opinions here. Also, I'm going to talk about identity and access management as well as insecure APIs. So, indirectly related to cloud, right? Because it's not all cloud, but we're talking about cloud here. But AI is definitely changing the threats in several ways, such as automating the steps to discover, validate, and exploit vulnerable targets much, much faster, as we've been talking about. Um, what I found is that nearly every attack continues to follow a familiar progression. They lean heavily on identity compromise, as defined in the MITRE attack matrix. But AI can be incredibly effective during the earliest stages of the attack chain. That's during the reconnaissance, malware development, and initial access. That's what we've seen to date, nothing beyond that. But with cloud's larger attack surface and agentic AI coming into the mix, it really scales these issues. It scales these issues. Um, it has an autonomous nature, so it can execute attacks independently. It can escalate risks further down the attack chain, like going into privilege escalation and lateral movement now. So in terms of top threat number one, which is misconfiguration and inadequate change control, um, automating the exploitation of misconfigurations can now be done at scale without direct human control. And it can invoke these changes into cloud environments with increased complexity, with increased speed, and increased sophistication. This makes it really hard for security teams to detect and keep up with the proper configuration and change control. Identity and access management, which we were just talking about in my focal area. As we talked, identities remain a prime target. They remain a prime target because when compromised, they are the most effective and efficient way for an attacker to move through the cloud and to reach sensitive systems and data. 90% of organizations experience identity-related attacks, and 85% of those are related to hacked machine identities, as we were mentioning earlier. So now attackers can use AI to automate and scale up attacks using AI algorithms. They can brute force password guessing very quickly or find vulnerabilities in authentication mechanisms like you were talking about, Andrew. Again, talk about sophisticated phishing that includes convincing emails and texts that are tailored to trick users to revealing their credentials, which is happening. And then I wanted to mention anomaly detection evasion, where now attackers can use AI to mimic normal user behavior and evade detection to make it harder for the IAM systems to actually identify this malicious activity. And again, this highlights the need for advanced identity security solutions that can really adapt to these evolving threats. And just real quick on insecure interfaces and APIs, I know you mentioned that. Um, I'll talk about automated exploitation, where AI, aside from accelerating the vulnerability discovery and exploitation, it can enable more complex AI attacks such as injection attacks, authentication bypass, privilege escalation, and it'll manipulate AI models to access sensitive data if your APIs are poorly configured. So with that, what do you guys say? There's so much to talk about. What do you say that we shift over to how does AI make the problem better? Michael, why don't you take us through?
Oh, I'll go first. I think we're all in violent agreement that AI is going to make things worse, but there are lots of opportunities to use AI on the defensive side. But let's start with accidental data disclosure, which is number seven. AI can help accelerate data masking efforts, which should potentially reduce some accidental disclosure. I also believe that AI is going to continue in the line of technologies that will help identify accessible and insecure data before it's accidentally disclosed. I hope we'll see how that plays out. Number nine is limited visibility and observability. AI should be able to review. I mean, is already able to review, but the capability is going to keep growing very quickly. Lots and lots of telemetry data that used to go unseen. I mean, we've all been looking at metrics and event logs and kind of everything that comes out of SIM, but a lot of it goes unseen until there's an incident. Now we're going to start generating prediction by, I think, Mark, you mentioned, like looking at more anomaly detection data, doing a bunch of event correlation, letting AI do root cause analysis, and effectively getting to more proactive monitoring and alerting. My biggest hope here is that AI will allow diminishing alert fatigue through smarter correlation. Um, then there was where I lumped everything together around vulns and insecure third party resources, insecure interfaces. Um, so I think if I counted right, that was number three, number five, and number eight on the threat list. I lump them all together because AI generated defense against all these issues is currently focused on discovery. DARPA started a program called Ingots a couple years ago with the goal, among others, to identify ways that AI could help find system vulnerabilities. The program, I'll quote from the prospectus, the program aims to identify and fix high severity chainable vulnerabilities before attackers can exploit them by using new techniques driven by program analysis and artificial intelligence to measure vulnerabilities. So I think DARPA is often out in front of these types of research efforts. I think they are here too. Darktrace recently published the claim that 42% of respondents to its AI survey expected AI to identify exploitable vulns. Now, why we need AI to identify exploitable vulns is I'm sure we could all have another panel on the state of affairs where we currently have technology to deal with it. But in general, we don't deal with it as well as we can, as well as we possibly could. And I think AI will make it easier for everybody. Um, Mark, back to you.
Thanks, Michael. So, in my view on how AI makes the problem better, AI is changing the offensive game in several ways. As I mentioned earlier, attacks are heavily focused on identity compromise. For example, at CyberArk, we actually came up with an AI platform as well. It's called Core AI, and it assists with setup, discovery of all identities with context so we can apply the right privilege controls against entitlements, sessions, credentials, and authentication management. And we can offer reports and audit and compliance. And I think this is the sweet spot when looking at threats through that AI security lens, and how to AI can make it better. Now, agentic AI can enhance identity security by automating threat detection, adapting to evolving threats and attacks, and enforcing zero trust. In terms of the top threats, top threat number one, misconfiguration and inadequate change control. This could be done through automated monitoring, where AI can detect unusual configurations and unauthorized changes in real time. It can perform regular security audits and alert security teams to potential vulnerabilities. And I wanted to mention that the use of automated incident response would be very, very valuable here. Going to top threat two, identity and access management. AI-powered identity threat detection can analyze login behaviors. It can detect anomalies and automatically trigger step-up authentication, limiting an attacker's ability to exploit credentials. And I found that just-in-time assignments instead of standing assignments, the just-in-time assignments are useful, but I really prefer zero standing privileges. This can prevent an attacker's access to privileged data in the event they've compromised an identity or groups that have powerful standing access, such as service accounts or IAM roles with elevated privileges. And in terms of insecure interfaces and APIs, the last top threat that I'm speaking about, it's really necessary to implement strong security measures such as robust authentication, encryption, rate limiting, and AI can analyze the API traffic to identify unusual patterns that may indicate an exploit attempt. Again, zero standing privilege for secure cloud and infrastructure access to cloud resources is highly encouraged to reduce the risk of overprivileged identities across multi-cloud environments. So with that, Andrew, why don't you take us home?
I completely agree with both of you that the potential for AI to discover vulnerabilities and exploits that have actionable solutions is massive. And when you combine that with agentic flows and proper guardrails, which are very important here, it could even lead to a game-changing level of automated remediation, assuming the attacker's AI doesn't get to you first. Um, and then, along the identity and access management space, I already talked about all of the challenges that it introduces. But like we've been talking about here, it can also be a significant helping hand in some of the IAM challenges that we're facing today. The scale of human and non-human identities in enterprise environments is staggering. Uh, in a lot of organizations, it's 45 non-human identities for every one human, and it's hard to imagine how SOCs and operational support staff are supposed to keep up with remediating legitimate issues, responding to attacks, and threat hunting to find the needle in the haystack. AI agents have the potential to offload some of the more standard and common scenarios, leaving the humans to deal with what they specialize in. And, imagine if your sock had a tidy little needle stack to start with before having to go and hunt through the haystack for the stray needles that your AI missed. And so, I think there's a lot of potential here to make things better, as long as we can address the challenges that we're creating at the same time. And so just my closing thoughts here are that the challenges that are presented here requires a robust and scalable solution for secure identification, authentication, authorization, and auditability of your AI workloads. Much like Mark is talking about, we can't keep building more advanced technology on top of the same legacy authentication and authorization mechanisms that we already know are insecure, or the house of cards is just going to fall. Instead, we need to shift our focus to identity and access based solutions that replace your static and your long-lived secrets and your standing privilege with open standards like OIDC Federation. And that way we can get out of the whole secrets management whack-a-mole. Michael, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, we're getting to the point where getting an AI into an environment that, as an attacker is just going to make it incredibly easy for the attacker, not just to attack AI, but to use AI to gather information to know what to attack, right? Just like if the defensive organization can use AI to scan for vulnerabilities, to patch vulnerabilities, etc., so can an attacker. And both of you guys are talking about non-human identities. Yeah, I mean, data that I've seen recently is that it's already bigger than that, and it's growing super fast. And I think I just saw 50 to 1, and I mean that's going to be 500 to 1 in 2 years. Um, poor identity management teams, that are going to have, always pushing water uphill, right? Now, will AI help them? Will AI be able to identify patterns in AIs and let them, or patterns in identities, and let them group them faster when they don't know about them and apply rules to groups? Yeah, it should do all of that. Same way that another analyst on the team could do all of that, maybe faster, maybe instantaneous, right? As soon as they're getting created, they're getting picked up. So I'm hopeful. Um, but yeah, I mean, an ever growing problem. I love that we're sitting here in 2025. It's a big enough problem that hopefully people believe it and will be interested in it. But we're still just at the cusp. The technology is improving almost daily. To wrap up, look, we've been watching one cohort of attackers become much more sophisticated over the last 30 years, while simultaneously watching the exact opposite cohort, meaning the unsophisticated attackers, just explode in growth, mostly due to readily available tools. You just don't have to have that many skills to be able to do a lot of damage. Both of those populations at the extremes are going to really, really benefit from AI. While, as always, defenders are left racing to keep up. Like any new technology, we counsel organizations to put strong governance processes in place to deeply, deeply understand their data, and really be clear on what data their internal AI tools have been given access to, and then to begin the arduous process of red teaming adversarial AI related actions against their business and technologies. And those are, I don't say that in a flip way, those are big, tall orders. So hopefully the organizations that expect AI to be able to give them a lot of benefit and scale will take some of that benefit and reinvest it into security. Who's next? Mark.
Thanks, Michael. To summarize my thoughts, AI already has and will continue to impact the threat landscape. The IAM top threat identifies identities, both human and machines, as predominant threat vectors, which will continue with AI-assisted attacks. Given the cloud's broader attack surface, it's crucial for organizations to defend themselves by adopting and evolving with AI-driven security solutions. For example, traditional AI and machine learning use predefined parameters and human assistance. The generative AI's natural language search queries, report creation, and threat summary, to now agentic AI that involves experiential learning, independently follows pre-established goals, and performs a complicated series of actions. The marketplace is crowded with a large number of security vendors claiming to have AI solutions. So I suggest investigating those that have platforms that span your environment, whether it's on-prem and multi-cloud, and that it can support discovery, observability, detection, and response to offer the right controls and the right understanding of risk to stay ahead of these attackers. And of course, consider the ability for reporting, audits, and compliance in these solutions. So with that, Andrew, why don't you close us out?
Yeah, I think we've done a pretty good job of representing where we're concerned, but also where we see some potential here, right? And so, hopefully this has been helpful for you all, and I'd just love to see, for once, this be one of those technologies that lets the defenders stay ahead of the attackers a little bit, but you know. I'd be lying if I said I was an optimistic person here. So I'll just leave on the note of be vigilant and exercise caution.
Here, here. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you very much.